drink of water at school should be safe. For many schools in Colorado, it's not. Now we got to find out which schools. New testimony about how conspiracy theories born in Colorado shaped the attack on the U.S. Capitol. And my thoughts on how our kids and grandkids will judge what we do today. You have your ballots and you have some questions, so let's answer them. And he had big goals for after graduation. Bad news. Wipe that all away.
In my mind, I shouldn't even really be here. I mean, it's a miracle that I'm still here.
A story of hope to end the week, just the way we like it, on Next. A new kind of testing is coming to more than 1,000 schools and hundreds of daycare centers across Colorado. A test designed to measure what is in a glass of water at school. Our Nusha Roy looks at how an old issue took on new urgency this year.
Something as basic as taking a drink of water from the drinking fountain. You know, it seems like such an innocent act.
And yet, Alexandra Simon said it's not so simple to make sure the water her kid is drinking is lead-free.
I honestly didn't realize it was such an issue, and I have a 3-year-old that goes to daycare.
She advocated for a new state law that requires 1,100 elementary schools and 450 child care centers to do mandatory tests of their drinking water for lead.
Most parents, myself included, like when I talk to them about it, are surprised that this is an issue.
But the state started putting together a picture when 67 schools voluntarily started testing their water 5 years ago.
Not all of the fixtures, but all of the schools found elevated lead levels.
You know, what we found has been the norm is low levels of lead contamination in water or outdated standards.
The problem was there wasn't enough money to help all of these schools fix the problem. This time around, though, it's different because of state dollars and federal COVID relief funds for both testing and fixes.
And so that could be changing out fixtures. It could be putting on a filter.
But Democratic Representative Emily Sirota, a bill sponsor, said the law is still falling short since it's going to first focus on pre-K through 5th graders and child care centers, not all grades. The state health department said the regulatory limit on lead is 15 parts per billion, which is compared to one single drop of paint in a 13,000-gallon swimming pool. The new state law would reimburse districts if levels are 5 parts per billion or higher.
Any level is too high.
The state health department said the most common source of lead in these situations is corrosion from plumbing materials, which is most frequent in older bills.
Over time, lead can cause issues with your learning ability. It can make you irritable. I don't think people should panic, but I do think they should be aware that this is a possibility.
While advocates are worried that lead levels can ebb and flow, so testing might miss problem spots.
Well, I think this bill is a great first step forward.
For Next, I'm Anusha Roy.
There's work around lead testing already, including Denver Water's work replacing bad pipes. There's a federal testing program for schools and child care facilities. There are some school districts that have their own programs. And then the state of Colorado is coming in to fill gaps for smaller districts and child care centers that need funding in order to make the necessary fixes. The first hearing of the January 6th Commission outlined the roles and disputed the lies of some prominent Colorado political figures.
Not only did President Trump refuse to tell the mob to leave the Capitol, he placed no call to any element of the United States government to instruct that the Capitol be defended.
American democracy and the Capitol were under violent attack by fellow Americans. Trapped inside the building, Vice President Pence's team blamed a University of Colorado visiting professor, John Eastman. Why? Because Eastman had come up with the plan for President Trump to overthrow American democracy and stay in power. Pence refused to do it. That's why the crowd was shouting. The committee says it will outline evidence that even Eastman knew Trump's plan to overrule a Democratic election was not legal.
You will also see evidence that John Eastman did not actually believe the legal position he was taking.
Inside the Capitol, committee evidence shows the building was breached by the mob just minutes before Colorado's Congresswoman Lauren Boebert tweeted that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had been removed from the chambers. Outside the Capitol was Colorado Republican candidate for Senate Ron Hanks. He falsely suggested it was Antifa storming the building. The conspiracy theory that Denver-based Dominion voting systems rigged the election with the help of Antifa came from Colorado Republican power broker Joe Oltmann. Committee testimony showed that Trump's own Attorney General, Bill Barr, told the president that that claim was, I'll let him say it,
I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was.
Watching the January 6th committee hearing last night, I was struck by what a missed opportunity it was. What a moment it would have been if there had been a united front of Democrats and Republicans alike saying that election losers in this country don't get to storm the Capitol beating police officers and trying to stop the vote count. We may take it for granted in America, but politics is the substitute for violence. Politics is how a society can solve its problems without physically attacking opponents. Political violence should draw universal condemnation. Instead, you get denials and conspiracy theories and misdirection and whataboutism from all but a few Republican leaders these days. What do you say we leave the politicians aside? Let's just talk about us. Our kids and grandkids will ask about this moment someday. They'll ask whether we stood with the mob or with the officers defending the Capitol. And thanks to the internet and social media, they'll be able to fact check our answers.
Tonight's next question comes from Dick, asking why there was only one race on his primary ballot where he could write in a candidate.
Dick, that is above my level of intelligence. So here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger. So Marshall, not only is this write-in candidate one race only, there's only one correct name you can write in that would count.
The name Daniel Hendricks. If you write Cory Gardner, for example, it won't count. If you write a cartoon character, it won't count. The only name that will count for this write-in candidate, as I try to talk and write at the same time, is Daniel Hendricks. Then you got to circle the bubble next to it. We've explained previously there are two ways to make it on the ballot. Go through your party's assembly process, like Republican Ron Hanks did to qualify as the first name on the ballot, or collect enough signatures from across the state, which is what Joe O'Dea did to get his name on the ballot. But this U.S. Senate race is the only one, Republican or Democrat, to have a write-in option. Dick wrote in wanting to know what are the qualifications and why not just be a name on the ballot instead. The qualifications are be an eligible voter for any political race and file to be a write-in candidate prior to 67 days before the election. You don't have to get party support. You don't need signatures across the states, but you also don't get your name written on the ballot unless someone writes it in. And for the write-in vote to count, the person voting needs to write the name, in this case, Daniel Hendricks, and bubble it in. It's less effort to qualify for the ballot, much more Herculean effort to actually get the votes.
Who's Dan Hendricks?
He's the guy who is the write-in candidate for U.S. Senate.
Okay, now we know. Thank you, Marshall. This week, Denver got bumped up to a high transmission level of COVID, according to the CDC. That's all the orange there on the map. It just means there's a lot more COVID circulating in the community, and the CDC would like us to put our masks back on. But my freedom! Easy, Patrick Henry. This is not an order. It's simply an ask this time around. Denver's health department's also making a recommendation on masks, not a mandate. Even Boulder, one of the last areas to drop a mask mandate, is not going to make it a requirement. Personal choice. So we asked Dr. Michelle Barron from UC Health about what personal choices she's choosing.
But I think it's, again, sort of thinking through these things in terms of, well, is it really worth the risk benefit? And a lot of that goes back again to individual health. And would we have this discussion if it was the flu? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. But I think that's the goal, is to have this sort of thinking through in that same context, and that the flu can harm people, can make people very sick. It doesn't for most people. And so some people, again, are like, I never want to get the flu. And some people are like, you know, I'll take my chance.
Dr. Barron says boosters are really key. She's seeing people hospitalized with COVID who have been vaccinated, not boosted. Barron says they tend to be staying not as long as with previous variants, and fewer patients are ending up in the ICU. Weekly positivity rate statewide is over 12% at this point, highest since early February. So you know the deal. Know your risk tolerance and your health. Make smart choices. Want a reason to feel great as we wrap up the week? You can always join us as we buy fresh produce for Coloradans who are worried about where they're going to find their next meal. Your Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign has raised more than $20,000 to help Food Bank of the Rockies buy that produce from local farm families. So, hey, they win out too. If you scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491, you can join me in donating. And as you know, even $5 helps. I love that this week's effort has two layers of benefit for our neighbors. There's the economic boost for our farmers and nutritious meals for families in need. thank you so much for what you've done.
Scientists have discovered a whole new drought that once crippled Colorado. 2,000-year-old lessons for water managers today.
Honestly, I think there's something very special about when you really come to a point where you have to stare death in the face.
He found positivity in his darkest time.
It makes you realize how much you have to live for.
Now he's celebrating milestones he never thought he'd see. That's next.
Colorado's been a pretty bad drought for more than 20 years now. We've seen worse, though. We have not seen it. It was 2,000 years ago. Researchers from the Bureau of Reclamation used tree ring records from along the Colorado River to look at past climates, to look back 2,000 years when the trees were parched, the river was low. Researchers say it was a far worse drought than today's.
Our ability to go back this far back in time and understand how droughts look like, right? And be able to use that information in water management, and so that we kind of have learned something new and how we can use that new knowledge from the past to plan better for the future.
Researchers now have a record of the Colorado River flows back to the 2nd century. Snapshot long before human-caused climate change, which allows us to make more informed decisions about our future water use.
So today marks our average first 90-degree day. Of course, we saw a 90-degree day. 3 thus far here into 2022. We were in the mid-90s in northern Colorado, hot off to the eastern plains. And folks, this is just the beginning. We still have plenty of clouds out there on HD Doppler 9. High pressure, though, really strengthening as we look ahead toward the weekend. And that brings a big warm-up, not just for us here in Colorado, but really much of the desert Southwest. Tomorrow, we're going to be close to potentially hitting a record. The current record stands at 100, last set back in 2013. My forecast high of 97. Whew, look at how toasty it is off to the eastern plains. A lot of folks heading into the triple digits out to the western slope. It's going to be a hot one too. 7-day forecast bringing just a couple of isolated storms for us on Sunday. It's hot and near record breaking again on Monday before a little cool off arrives by the middle of next week.
It's pretty amazing what you can learn in the worst moments life can bring. A terminal diagnosis is helping a 20-year-old from Greeley really live. Marshall Zellinger is back to introduce us to somebody who inspired his own medical team when he needed them most.
Everyone gets recognized on graduation day.
Austin, will you please stand?
Not everyone gets singled out, like Austin Walls.
Austin has been through so much the past 2 years.
The staff of Windsor High School is incredible. I mean, there's a lot of big hearts there.
For Austin, getting to graduation day took an unexpected detour.
Partway through my senior year, I threw off school pretty much entirely. I stopped showing up. I wasn't turning in assignments.
His mood changed, and it wasn't just teenage angst for the kid who took the mental fitness test for the Marines.
I was in the 96th percentile. They wanted to make me a nuclear physicist who would, be on one of the submarines monitoring nuclear weapons. I mean, whew, right?
He was mentally fit until he wasn't.
All of a sudden, he just did not want to go to school. He wasn't turning things in. He had no interest in the Marines. They would be knocking at the door. He wouldn't answer. And I couldn't figure out what was going on.
August 25th, 2020. Was when I collapsed and had my first seizure.
August 25th, 2020, the day Austin and his mom found out what was causing his behavioral changes.
I have glioblastoma. It's a stage 4 high-grade glioma brain cancer.
For most people, it is just bad luck.
Most stories have a here's what we learned for the next person moment. As Austin's Dr. Adam Green explains, this really isn't one of those stories.
Families always want to know, kind of what caused this, right? And is there anything we could have done differently? And the answer is really no.
There's something very special about when you really come to a point where you have to stare death in the face. It makes you realize how much you have to live for.
It is that outlook that got the attention of Austin's medical team.
No matter how he was feeling, he always had a positive attitude. He was always very polite.
So when it came time to pick a patient to be part of a UC Health-sponsored American Cancer Society fundraiser at Coors Field, Austin was positively the choice.
Austin is doing so well because of his outlook on life right now.
He even inspired more than just an invitation to Coors Field.
We all wanted to go to his high school graduation.
Austin Cole Walls.
They were there, as Austin was recognized for his accomplishments that go beyond graduation.
In my mind, I shouldn't even really be here. I mean, it's a miracle that I'm still here.
For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
According to Austin's doctor, life expectancy with Austin's type of tumor is 12 to 18 months. Austin is 21 months past his first treatment, and he told us he feels fantastic. That fundraiser at Coors Field raised $255,000 for the American Cancer Society.
Stories on demand, like from a story dispenser.
What pairs better with wine and cheese than a good story?
This week's good news takes us to a place with stories on the menu.
There are only 307 in the world, and Old Town Arvada has one of them. To celebrate your good news on this Friday, our photojournalist Byron Reed visits the place where corks pop and composition flows.
Beautiful place, great people that own it, amazing customers. There's no better job.
Good news of the day, it's Friday, and we're sitting at our favorite place, Silver Vines Winery, enjoying a glass of wine.
I'm Emily Grace King, and I'm the chair of the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission.
They spoke over the roar of 200 nervous voices.
Well, the short story dispenser is a machine that the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission purchased for the city to place at different businesses all over Arvada.
It must have been Spanish. The one who heard it said,
Can I get you to read one? You want me to read one?
To dispense short stories and give the community other ways to interact with literature and to find cool stuff to read.
A secret disclosed in art class.
The one that Arvada owns was one of the first ones in the state of Colorado.
My good news of the day is I went and got my 4th COVID shot today.
Ah, one of them said.
Today I'm going to go see a movie with my dad, and tomorrow I'm going to my cousin Maddie's first birthday party.
Hi, I'm Kristen Scher. I'm co-owner of Silver Vines Winery here in Old Town Arvada. And I thought it was a great idea because what pairs better with wine and cheese than a good story?
I love reading. Obviously too much for my wife.
My good news of the day, I know it's nothing huge, but we're not seeing any snow outside.
There was no reason for it, no explanation.
Well, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, you can sit around, you can share the stories and read them and
talk about it.
Yeah.
And this machine helps people kind of have that unexpected element to their days. And I always think that's good news.
It was a sign of pure genius and proof that a public agency has a wonderful sense of humor. That in your feedback next. It's a sign that Jeffco Schools has a sense of humor. We showed you the sign at DeVille Elementary in Lakewood. Discover your genius. Jeffco Public Schools shared with us that the sign has been updated. It now reads, Jeffco is hiring. All geniuses welcome. I tell you what, if every public agency in Colorado had an actual sense of humor like Jeffco Schools, this state would be a better place. Christine writes in tonight to say, I watched the local and national news and find the pattern mind-numbing. She says Next is different, informative, uplifting, funny. She says, please keep moving the needle away from all of the death and despair. I promise you we will. See you next time.